ohmathgad.
Oh math god guys, welcome to today's video in which we're going to be learning how to interpret a scatter plot, and we're going to be seeing some concepts of the scatter plot. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay guys, so when we are studying the scatter plot, we may have some types of associations or trends that we see that the scatter plot follows. The first one, the first type that is very common, is actually a positive association. So whenever we see that there are points that get higher each time, so whenever we have a value of y and x, and the trend here is that a positive association is found whenever the y value increases and also the x value increases, right? So we see that in this case, for example, as the value of x grows, the general tendency is that the value of y is also going to grow. So there we have a positive association, right? We can have it a little bit more strong when we have a more defined line, right? Or we may have a weaker one where we have more points, right? But regardless, that is going to be a positive association. Now, a negative association is found whenever the value of y decreases as the value of x increases, right? So it's something like this. So you have lots of values and you see that as the value of x increases or is larger, the value of y is going to be decreasing, right? And again, we can have a very strong trend, right? Or we can have a very diffuse or weak one, right? But it's still a negative association because the tendency is for the points or the plots in the scatter plot diagram or graph to get lower, right? Now we have the definition of cluster is whenever we have a lot of points or a number of points together, very close together, that's what we call a cluster. So a cluster is something like this. So if we have some points, right, and then we have lots of points in a given area, we call this a cluster of points, right? Then a gap and the outlier are also two terms that we're going to be seeing. So a gap is an area on the graph that contains no data, and the outlier is a data point set of the rest of the data points. So if we have a graph like this, right, and we have a point that is completely off the rest of them, and we see that it doesn't follow the same trend, we're going to call that an outlier, right? And we see that this space where we have no data is going to be called the gap, okay? Now, let's take a look at a problem in which we're going to be using all these concepts. Okay, so today's problem says the following. Okay, so George graphs the amount of sleep his classmates got versus the grade they got on their final exam in this scatter plot. Okay, identify the type of association, the cluster, the outliers, if any, and the gap. What we can see here is that we have values of x, right? So in this case, we have 4 and it has a value of around 65. And we have a value of 6 and it has a value of around 70, like the middle of the 2 points. And we have that on 8, we have some values of 80. And of 10, we have a value of 100, right? So we can see that the values are going to be increasing. As we increase the value of x, we are going to increase the value of y. So we are going to say that the type of association is a positive association, right? A positive association can also be known as a positive correlation. It's the same thing, okay? A cluster. Well, a cluster, if you guys remember, is whenever we have a lot or a group of points close together. So we can say that this is a cluster of points because we have some points that are very close together. And outliers. So this would be the cluster. And the outlier is a point that is way off the table. So in this case, we see that this is a clear outlier, right? And we have that this is the cap because we have no information whatsoever there, right? So the trend line indicates the general course or tendency of the association studied in the scatter plot, right? So in this case, we have that red line, which is more or less going to try to be in the middle or trying to touch the most points. And if it doesn't touch the most points, it's going to try to be very close to them, right? So it's going to indicate the general cursor or tendency, right? Now that trend line, we can find the equation for it, right? So if someone else was doing the trend line, maybe their line is not going to be exactly the same, but its values are going to be very likely very similar, right? In order to draw to find the equation of the trend line, we're going to take a look at 2 points, right? So maybe we see that we have the value of 10 is 100, and maybe we see that the value here of around 3 is going to be of 60. So it's going to be 0.3 comma 60, right? So what we can do in this case is that we are going to first find the slope. The slope is going to be found as y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, right? So 100 minus 60 divided by 10 minus 3. And that is going to give us a value of 40 divided by 7, which is approx 5.7. And now that we have found the value of the slope, we can actually use y equals mx plus b to find the value of b. The value of b, we just have to see, we have a value of y here and a value of x, right? So we can use that point or we can use the other point, right? And we are going to get the value of b. So y, in this case 100, is equal to m, which is the slope we just found, multiplied by x, which in this case is going to be 10, plus b, right? So we're going to see that 100 is equal to 57 plus b. So we solve for b, and the value that we're going to get is of 43. So that means that the y-intercept is going to be of around 43. And that means that our equation is going to be y equals 5.7, which is, again, our slope, plus b, which we just found is around 43, which is our y-intercept. Now, guys, it's very important that you guys remember that if I do this trend line and I do it with a ruler, for example, the value is not going to be always the same, like if a friend of mine does it, right? But the values that we're going to get of slope and y-intercept are going to be very, very close. So 5.6, 5.4, 40, 41, 42 on the y-intercept, right? So it's very, very important that you guys try doing it on your own, and that way you are going to enhance your math skills and your scatter plot skills. So guys, see you on the next one. Bye.
Check out these other videos to improve your math skills, and make sure you click that subscribe button to make the community grow. Follow ohmathgad in its social media accounts, drop a like, a comment below, and see you on the next one. Bye!